So I took just a few minutes and went ahead and put the white dots on the rest of the die, and I've saved this now. So this is dice 0002. All right, so what can we do now? Well, now what I want to do is really talk about lighting and shading, and we're going to complete this scene and move on to something more complex. So we've created two materials, we've built the model, we've used the bevel tool, we've learned about selections. So what I want to do now is take a step back and build a ground plane. So over here, up in the Basic tab, you'll see that there's a number of different tools. Now we can certainly just draw out a flat box, but if you move your mouse over the tube primitive, you'll see that there's a plane item if you hold the shift key. So we're going to hold the shift key and click on that, and we add a nice plane to the scene. Then I'm going to use the R key for scale, and then right in the center of that there's a circle. If I grab on this, it scales on the Y, the blue scales on the Z, and the red scales on the X, left and right. If I grab in the center, I scale equally with all of those. So I'm just going to click and drag that open really big. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is press move, which is that next one, or press W on the keyboard, and I'm going to move that down. Just like that. So here's a little thing. You'll notice that I'm working now in a shaded view, but my die is wireframe. If I go here to the items tab, you'll see that here's the plane, and there's the die. So there's two different layers. But when I go between those layers, one's solid and one is wireframe. The reason is by default, Modo makes the background layer a wireframe. And to change that, all you have to do is press O for options. Down here on this menu, it says inactive meshes. Select that, and at the very top it says make inactive same as active. When I click that, everything will be shaded. Okay, I usually leave that off for beginner tutorials simply because I want you to know which layer you're working on. But now that you're all into it a little bit, it should be just fine. All right, so I'm going to save this now incrementally. So this will be version 3. The plane, let's select that item, press M on the keyboard, and we'll call this ground plane. And we can even just give it a little bit of shading, and I just want it just kind of a gray, something like that. That's got a little too much color in it, but that's okay. Can change that later. So now what we need to do is get over to the render tab. But you may not really have to. I did it earlier. When we jump over to render, you can click the little play button, and you'll actually get to see your die. Select the die and press the Shift A to fit right in that into view. You're actually going to see Modo's terrific default lighting and shading. Okay, so 2 colors, one on the ground, one on the die. I should say 3 colors, one on the ground, one on the dots, and one on the surface, and a default light. Now, also by default, Modo puts on global illumination, and what that means is our environment. If I hold the Alt key and I rotate around, you can see it's this kind of grayish white, sort of cloudy background. That is our environment. And if you go down here to the shader, you'll see environment material. That right there on the right side, this is what our environment is. Well, what does global illumination do? Well, if I select render, over here on the right is global illumination. Click this menu. You'll see that it's on. And it's under indirect illumination. What that means is my environment is also assisting in the lighting. If I turn this off, well, now it looks like I just have one light on the subject. Turn that on, the environment is now lighting the scene. So we're going to talk more about that a little bit later, but it's on by default in Modo, and it's just a wonderful thing to make your images look even that much better. All right, so got some shading, got some surfacing. Yeah, that's okay. It's nice in the render. We can do something with lighting, but here's something I want to show you that's new for 901. I didn't talk about it earlier, just not to get too involved, but we talked briefly about some of these viewports. Well, this advanced viewport is a really big deal in 901. And when I go to that, give it a second to update, it's scalable. So now I'm working on a laptop right now. And if you're working on a big system with a heavy-duty video card, this is going to work even better for you. But what this does, it actually allows me to see my model almost as a real-time render. And depending on what I put on, it's going to be. So if I press O, get my viewport options, if you take a look under here, there's a new advanced options. I can turn on shadows. Let me rotate around here. And look at that. I'm doing this in real time now. And it's not a very complex scene, of course, but even so, it's terrific. All right, display override. So we want to say render without wireframes. So we won't see the wireframes of our model. We're going to enable ambient occlusions. All right, so we'll get into that a little bit more later, but when we've got areas of light that are not hit, we're actually seeing that as well, and that's going to be an important part with our global illumination. All right, we can play with intensity. We can actually put on even a little anti-aliasing, so it's got cleaner edges. And even if we have transparency, that will be on as well. So this is a really great thing. And I've seen some demos with it that really have taken Moto to the next level because, again, I'm on a laptop. So this is pretty good. Imagine if you're on something with a really heavy-duty video card.